Well, welcome everybody and thank you for joining us today. My name is Belinda Herbert and I am the Marketing Executive here at AFTA, and I'm very pleased to introduce to you today our guest speaker, Ben Alcock. Now, before we get started, I've just got a couple of quick housekeeping points for you to share with you today. So all of our guests are in view-only mode, which means you're mute. So we're not able to talk to you through the session. If you'd like to ask any questions, simply type them in through the questions toolbox in your little GoToWebinar toolbox session on the left-hand side. We'll be recording today's session, so if you'd like to share it with your team or watch it again, you can do so by visiting the AFTA website. We'll have it uploaded by tomorrow for you, along with the presentation notes and presentation slides. Now, we will have some time at the end of today's session for questions and answers. However, if you'd like to type them into the questions toolbox at any point throughout today's session, you can do so, and then we'll have Ben go through them at the end of the webinar. So we're delighted to have Ben join us today to talk a little bit more about how to create and manage inspiring content for your travel business. Ben is a highly accomplished travel industry marketer and communications pro, with many roles spanning across retail, wholesale, airlines, national tourism offices, and luxury resort representation. Ben is currently a travel writer, blogger, and content creator, and also an on-air contributor on ABC's North Coast Radio, and again, a freelance travel marketing consultant and storyteller with Resource. So thanks for joining us today, Ben.
No worries, Belle. Thanks for having me.
I'll hand over to you.
Okay. Welcome, everyone. Thanks for tuning in. I just want to take you through sort of my way of looking at storytelling and how important that is to kind of be right at the center of your marketing activity these days. And now I know that that's often really can seem quite complicated, given the sort of plethora of social media platforms that abound these days, and it sort of seems like there's a new one sort of pops up every day. And you know, there's a temptation to be on all of them, to be on Instagram, to be on Twitter, to have some kind of activity going on LinkedIn, maybe to have a blog. Should we be on Pinterest, Snapchat, you name it? And I think if you focus on the platforms too much, you can really work yourself up into a bit of a lather. And so I like to take a step back and actually focus on the telling of stories. Now, we work in the travel industry, and there's no industry that I can think of that is more about stories than travel. We don't actually sell things, we sell experiences and stories. So we'll talk about where you can find some of those stories later and how to go about telling them. But look, a few myths, I think, about social media. When you just look at social media in isolation, there isn't just one best way of doing this. Now, again, think about that as I'm taking you through this process. This is my take on things. There isn't one best way, and that's because all businesses are different. Everyone's customer base is different. So what we effectively have is a bunch of tools that we can leverage in the best way possible. And the beauty of social media and digital is that we can test and try things and see what works and what doesn't. I think in recent years also, people have forgotten about email. I'm a massive fan of really good quality email marketing. I think, you know, as everyone jumped on Facebook and different social platforms, we thought, well, we don't have to put together an EDM every month or quarter or however frequently we're doing it because we're on Facebook. It seems Facebook and all the social platforms these days, and week by week, make it harder and harder for your content to reach your audience unless you're paying for it. So it's certainly not free. It is a great platform. It's a great way to interact with your clients and potential customers. But I think taking a step back and just making a note to perhaps review or restart your email marketing efforts is a really, really good idea. I'd take a database of 100 email addresses over 1,000 Facebook likes any day. So when we start talking about storytelling in travel and travel writing, we quickly find ourselves in this area of content marketing. And the definition of that really is the distribution of valuable and compelling content to attract and engage a clearly defined target audience with the objective of driving ultimately a profitable customer response. And when you think of social media platforms as just the medium, they're not the message. If you're not loading your social platforms up with content, it's very much like a television without a TV show. It's just a box. It's going to be boring. Are we still going?
Oh,
sorry, everyone.
Okay.
Yeah, so marketing is no longer about the stuff that you make. It's really about the stories you tell. It's a great quote from Seth Godin, who's a marketing guru. And it's lucky that it's not about the stuff we make, because as I said before, we don't really make anything in the travel industry. It's all about experiences, and the travel game is an incredibly rich source of stories. So yeah, content and social media are really tightly entwined. They're actually best friends. They can't really exist or function particularly well without the other. Your social platforms, whether it's just Facebook or your digital marketing through your emails, needs content, and your content needs those platforms to be broadcast and heard and found by your audience. So it's important to remember that as I said, the social platforms are just your broadcast mechanism, but the stories have got to come from you or around you. So what does that all mean? Now, I think a kind of smart way of, a good starting point for this is a sort of a dinner party test. So you've been invited to this dinner party by these people, maybe by Sharon down the end there, and she's just told them that you're a travel agent. Now, what you do next is really important. If you just started kind of yelling out airfare offers and great 4-night packages to Bali, I think these people would tune out pretty quickly. But if a conversation kind of starts about, you know, what's your favorite place to travel? Where have you been recently? Do you get to travel a lot for work? Have you flown business class? You know, why are you a travel agent? If you could start kind of tapping into those stories, you'll get these guys really interested very, very quickly. And then maybe at some point down the track, one of them becomes a customer. So you really need to take them on a journey around what you do, why you do it, why you love it. That builds familiarity, it builds trust, and it builds, really importantly, likability. So we as humans, we're storytelling creatures. It's really what distinguishes us from, you know, every other animal species on the planet. We learn through it, we engage through it, we connect through it, and we share other people's stories. And that's why, for me, it's essential that stories are at the middle of all of this. So not that long ago, to be a storyteller, you kind of needed to be a media mogul like this guy, or a publisher. You needed to have a platform. But with digital marketing and websites and social media, everyone has that platform now, and you can actually say whatever you like. So I always encourage people to start thinking like a publisher, because at the center of it, you should have your own website, and on that website you will have space to tell those stories, and then use social networks to broadcast those stories and bring people back to your website. So a couple of stats, probably not that surprising. Nearly 8 out of 10 Australians are on social, and they're averaging about 10 hours a week. There must be some real slackers out there, Belle, because I'm on there much more than that. I don't know about you.
Oh, certainly not more than that.
Yeah. 85% of consumers regularly seek out trusted content when considering a purchase. So we're kind of back to that dinner table conversation. 82% feel more positive about a company after reading relevant custom content. So that's content that has been created potentially by that business, but specifically for that audience. 78% believe that organisations producing custom content are actually interested in building good relationships with them. And interestingly, given this market is exploding, only 1% of millennials said that a compelling advertisement would actually make them trust a brand more. So you really have to earn your audience these days. And 92% of consumers say that they trust earned media above all other advertising. So earned media is effectively when someone clicks like to follow your Facebook page or follows you on Twitter or Instagram or signs up to your email. You've earned that content. You've earned that connection between you and your audience. In a nutshell, people buy into you before they buy from you. It's a really important point. So customer interaction has really changed. It's really about them now. It's just really important you get to know your audience, understand what motivates them, what their likes are and their dislikes, and then serve up content specifically for them. So it's really important to know your audience and then engage them with sustained storytelling. So how do you go about doing that? I think I get to this point often with people, and I get it. But there's two kind of easy ways out of it. So one is to create original content. So look at your own business, your own people, your own experiences, and create content from that, or curate third-party content. So you might find some really interesting travel content that perhaps has come from the travel media or a travel blogger or an influencer, and then share that content. So you can either create it or you can curate it. The created content, the original content, is a bit more potent, but both are great ways to start telling stories. So we'll have a bit of a look at a couple of well-known travel businesses and what they're doing, just as a starting point. So this is Contiki. It probably doesn't surprise any of you. The Contiki are great in this area, really, really active. This is their blog area on their website called 62. And you'll see there, for example, I've just picked out this recent blog post about best adventure experiences you can do in Latin America with Contiki. Now, interestingly, on the website, they actually make reference to Contiki. When they share it on social, the headline is less of a pitch. It's about 11 great experiences you can do in Latin America. So they've created that bit of content on their website, and they're just using Facebook to broadcast it and bring people back. But they're also curating content. So here's a great video about the kind of quirky stuff you see in the kind of gaming and popular culture space in Japan. So they've credited the original creator of it. But again, this is about inspiring people to travel, which is what all of us should be doing. This is Contiki's Instagram page. Now, interestingly, this highlighted image is the only image that's there. All the others are shared photos, so third-party content. So they're really using other people's content, curating it and posting it, again, just to inspire people to travel. Virgin Australia also, you would expect to be great in this area. This is their holidays and travel content space, loaded up with all the kinds of articles that you might see, for example, in their in-flight magazine, and then those are shared across their social channels. But as you can see here, they're also curating content from third parties. And this is just a super cute photo that hopefully people will like and share and pass around and perhaps start conversations around traveling with kids. Trafalgar also. So this is on their website. They have a feed of Instagram posts, and this is all from people who've tagged their photos with simply Trafalgar, I believe. So these guys are, I guess, enhancing their own marketing activities by sharing other people's content. It's a really kind of quick and easy way of going about it. And also they have a fantastic blog, and then they use social to broadcast those stories and bring people back to their website. You can probably see a bit of a pattern here. So really what these guys are doing well is kind of leaving breadcrumbs, digital breadcrumbs out there, casting them out, and drawing people back up to the shop window for a look in, like this guy's doing. So what if you are not a super interesting business like Contiki or like Virgin or like Trafalgar? What might you do in this kind of storytelling space? So we'll have a quick look at some areas where you might not think that there's some great storytelling content. So World Nomads is a travel insurance company. Now I'm kind of this caught my eye immediately, that there's a stories tab, really prominent stories tab on their website. And you might think this is just horror stories of when things have gone terribly wrong for not having travel insurance. You quickly get in there and see that this is really, as they say, personal, inspiring and engaging narratives that get to the heart of why we travel. So for travel insurance companies telling these stories, I think everyone should. And importantly, on every page, they're asking people to sign up for more information. So you might land on this page because you spotted something on through Facebook. Someone shared something on Facebook. You land on this page and you're asked to sign up for updates. And everybody should be asking for that on their website. These are some of their stories. So again, these are really travel focused. Got a great piece here on Bhutan. This is genuine travel writing. And then they're using their social platforms to broadcast it. So this is their Twitter. Again, they're broadcasting genuine travel content, which brings people back to their website. And they're also curating content. So here they've posted a story from Rough Guides. So again, just to see what people are doing and cover more. Look, again, we're in the travel insurance space and they've got a fantastic blog. Theirs does have a bit more of a skew around insurance and I guess safety and things you might consider when traveling. But this is great travel content. And again, using social media just to broadcast it and bring people back to their website. It's a bit of a pattern. And some great tips, for example, on pregnant women. So I'm imagining in this area, they've done some keyword research, discovered opportunities around traveling when pregnant and produced some custom content for that. So again, look, it's a real buzzword at the moment, this content marketing idea. It's easy to think that it's kind of new, but it does beg the question, why is the highest accolade in the culinary world awarded by a tyre company? Were you aware Michelin's a tyre company, Belle? Yeah. So I think it's easy to kind of imagine that this is just a sponsorship arrangement, that Michelin just sponsors this fine dining guide. But it actually goes back to the very last years of the 1800s. So just when cars were hitting the road in France, and the Michelin brothers ran a rubber company, and they saw an opportunity around manufacturing tyres. Now, they were producing tyres, and cars were hitting the roads very, very slowly. So their kind of thinking was, we can't influence the speed at which cars are purchased or manufactured, but we can increase the frequency by which cars are used. So they started producing a food guide. Now, this was all about getting people out in their cars, ranking restaurants and food experiences around the country. So one star meant that it was a good restaurant in its category. 2 stars, excellent cooking, worth a detour, interestingly, get out in your car. And 3 stars is absolutely exceptional and worth a special journey. So these guys, this is an amazing example of, more than 100 years, something like 120 years. These guys, the Michelin company, has been producing content to get people traveling. It's a tyre company. So we're going to have a bit of a look at, these are some businesses that I think Vera from Spencer Travel is listening. Hi Vera, if you're out there. Some people who I think are doing good things really, really simply and really, really well in this storytelling area. So Spencer Travel have a prominent news section, which is effectively a blog area on their website. I encourage everyone to do this. If you don't have one, it should be your prime takeout, is set one up for your website. And you can just see here these 2 content items. One is actually about Penny Spencer visiting the Singapore Airlines kitchens out at the catering facilities at the airport a couple of weeks ago, and they've taken that and turned that into a little story. And the one below is from Virgin Australia about its new international lounge network. Now that to me has come from a press release. So there's a great combination there of supplier content and custom content from within the business. So as you can see here, you click through, they've turned it into a really short, great, fun story. There's a classic photo there of Penny Spencer on the left in the kitchens, and it's tapping into her insights as an industry insider, an expert. She gets behind the scenes looks. It's really positioning that business in the travel space as, really raising their credentials as experts, which is what I think all of us should be doing. If we're thinking about why people are using travel agents, it's not just because you offer great prices, but it's because of your expertise, your professionalism, and all the things that go along with that. And then that piece of content is being broadcast on the Spencer Travel LinkedIn page and Facebook, and it's all about bringing people back to the website. So it's a great bit of custom content, super easy, thrown together quickly, published and broadcast. Another example here, same guys, the general manager of Spencer Travel literally just went on a fam trip to Canberra with Qatar Airways. Every familiarisation, educational trip is a great opportunity for a short piece of content. They've turned that into a story on their website. And again, it's being broadcast, a couple of photos there from the trip, and it's being broadcast on LinkedIn and bringing people back to the website. More of this as well. So here on Facebook, one of Spencer Travel's consultants recently went on a fam trip with Ty and Belmont. Now, I imagine most of you out there, when you go on an educational, you probably have to write some kind of a trip report that gets filed away. These are a goldmine for travel stories for your business. So this started out as a trip review for the business, which I think keeps the tax office happy. It was turned into a short piece of custom content published on the company's blog and then broadcast through social media. So another great tip, go back, rummage through all of your trip reports from your educationals, tease out the little stories and publish them and get them out there. And here's another one from a cruise expert in the business who recently inspected Crystal Serenity. And again, Tina from Spencer Travel went to Bhutan. This is actually my favourite piece of recent content from these guys because it goes back, there's another step in this one. Started out as a trip report, made its way into a printed newsletter, which is what you can see on the right there. And it's highlighted there. So it literally went into print first and then landed on their website and is broadcast through social media. So one bit of content getting life, being given life across a number of different touch points for their customers. These guys, the Travel Authority, Sydney-based TMC, and they've really kind of ramped up their activity. When I look at what they're doing, it kind of reminds me of a bit of an in-flight magazine. So if you think about what you stumble on when you pick up an in-flight magazine, there's usually a introduction from the CEO or the general manager. There will be some travel writing. There will be some advertisements. There'll be top tips from people within the organisation. I think it's a nice way to think about the kinds of content that you can include in your storytelling activities. So these guys really produce an EDM. That's kind of their focus. It's very much like receiving carry-on in your inbox. And each of these items you see in this EDM is a separate item on the news section in their website. So the content gets added there first, broadcast through their EDM, and it brings people back to that news section on the website. And if we just go back, you can see the kind of stories that they've got there. So someone's just recently back from New York and they've done a little hotel review of where they stayed. There's an opinion piece there about the value of travel agents and their ATAS accreditation. Again, another item there from the managing director who's recently back from Sri Lanka, sorry, as well as some airfare specials. And that little Emirates piece there at the bottom left, that's come directly from an update sent through from their Emirates rep. So the process that I like to kind of set up is we start with a story or a content item. Could be anything. Load it to the website in your blog area or your stories area or your news area. Distribute it across whichever social platforms, for example, that work for you guys or that you've got active. Might just be Facebook, might be Facebook and LinkedIn. It might just be by email. So you're using them to distribute your content and bring traffic back to your website. Pretty simple setup. Now, I guess some stats here that just give you an insight into the importance of storytelling. So recent research shows 92% of consumers want brands to make ads that feel like a story. They don't want to be sold to, they want to be engaged. And 78% of consumers will trust your brand more if you create more customized content. And stories should be right at the center of that. And the beauty of adding that content on your website directly is it's your environment, it's your space, you can post whatever you like on there, as opposed to publishing on a third-party platform. The beauty of that also is that every time you add some fresh content to your website, like a new little blog post, that makes your website bigger, which gives it more pages for search engines to index. So there's some great SEO advantages from that as well. And every time you bring someone to your website and they click around and discover more content, so they're in your news section and they're clicking between stories, search engines like that as well. So once you kind of got your content marketing radar tuned in, you see this absolutely everywhere. A couple of examples here that aren't specifically travel related, but I think they're really, really good. So Woolies do their fresh market updates. Typically a Woolies advertisement will be, you know, what's on sale, what's hot this week. These little fresh market updates position themselves literally as the fresh food people. They're telling you how connected they are to the growers. They know when the batch of mandarins are coming in, whether they're going to be sweet, what they're going to be like, and when they're going to be ready. So really clever, simple way of telling a story, which is quite engaging, positioning this business as the real fresh food people. I love these from Spotify. Now, these are just billboards, they're ads, but they're also tiny, weeny little stories. So this one just says, dear person in South Williamsburg who played cold water 6 times on the hottest day of the year, we see what you did there. So again, they're tapping into what's going on in their business. Now, kind of equivalent for you guys might be, I don't know, what did you guys sell the most of last week? You know, was a particular destination really hot? Was there a massive run on, I don't know, river cruising in Europe? So you might take that insight and turn that into a little post on your website and then broadcast that out through your social platforms and include it in your EDM. So think about what's going on in your business. Is there any information you can harvest, any data that you can kind of tap into and go, that's a bit interesting, let's publish that. Again, Spotify, I like this one. Dear person in Venice who listened to Adele for 4 hours straight on Valentine's Day, are you okay? So again, similar stuff. Find the stories within your business and push those out. Back to travel. So this was published on Travel Weekly, not that, actually last year, about a year ago. So a story about, you know, kind of an interesting story, quite funny, about the lengths that Aussie travellers will go to for free Wi-Fi. And this was actually just a piece of research put out by an insurance comparison website. So again, they've found some data or done some research, turned that into a press release, sent that out. That is a classic piece of content marketing. I like this one as well. What are Virgin's business class passengers stealing? I've got some of these actually. So these are Virgin Atlantic's little salt and pepper shakers. So these guys are kind of taking it to another level. They're producing something in real life that they are, if you turn it upside down, you can see it says pinched from Virgin Atlantic. They actually want you to take it home and tell people about it. So this is kind of content storytelling in real life. And on the back of that, they've produced a press release and sent it out to travel media. Again, this is just a story. There's no price point. There's no nothing in it. This is about talkability and having a bit of fun. So a couple of tips. It is really important to get to know your audience, just who they are, what they're interested in. A kind of simple way to approach this, and this is specifically in terms of then creating content for them, is creating these little avatars. So you might, I did look at your database or have a general idea that maybe you have 2 particular types of customer, maybe it's 3, maybe it's 4. You kind of distill those customers down into these little avatars, give them a name, and then make sure you're producing content for those people once a month or once a fortnight, whatever your frequency. It's about getting to know your audience and then serving the right kind of stories to them directly. Really important that you're not boring. Be human, be authentic, be yourself. And there's no excuse, I don't think, in the travel industry to ever be boring, even if you're a travel insurance company. be relevant. So again, this probably comes down to knowing your client base really, really well and producing content that is for them, directly for them. And I only think you should stuff chickens and not content. So what I'm saying here is it's really important to write for people first and search engines second. There's often a temptation to kind of load up your content with particular keywords. Now, if that's fine, but if it ends up that you've produced content that human beings don't like when they read it, then I think you've probably done yourself a little bit of a disservice. So write for people first. And importantly, don't bite off more than you can chew. So what I mean there is you might be inspired to kind of dash off and start furiously producing content. You've got to make sure what you're doing is sustainable, that you can handle it, because the reason that sort of storytelling efforts and content marketing efforts fall over is because they stop, and they usually stop because you're doing too much. So start small and then scale up as you can. So here are some kind of sources, things to think about for where you might find your stories. So I mentioned before famil and travel reports, and I recommend everyone go back and dig into those. I saw one recently, a fantastic trip, flying business class with British Airways, initially to Singapore with Shangri-La. They inspected a bunch of hotels in Singapore and then flew on to London and Paris. So that one trip report immediately to me feels like 3 stories. There's a story about what that business class flight was like, so you can do a little flight review. There's a story about what the hotels were like in Singapore, and then there's also a story about what the European hotels were about. So the stories don't have to be huge, they can be very, very short, just effectively like a review from within your business. Supplier press releases are really, really good source as well. So I recommend that you jump on all of your preferred airline partners, hoteliers, and subscribe to their press releases. You can usually find a media center or a news center section of those websites. Jump in there and start receiving those. Even when a supplier visits you, it's a great opportunity. So that visit, they'll give you an update. That should be a source of a little story. Even if it's just take a selfie, post that on your website. Again, it just shows the kind of depth of connection you have with your suppliers, which I think is a really compelling customer. That to me is compelling for customers to know that you as a travel agent have a great relationship with all of your suppliers, and that support and backup is there. Any industry events or functions that you might hold also are great sources of stories. Any awards? Are you a finalist in the NTIAs? Any of those kind of things. Have you won a local business award, for example? Those things are great bits of news to push out. You might just post a monthly thing about what's hot right now, what you're selling lots of, what any emerging destinations are. Any information, any stories in that area are valuable as well. You should all be talking about the benefits of being ATAF. Again, a very compelling proposition for customers. Case studies and any research that you might find are great sources of simple stories. So think about those, identify interesting stories and start posting those. Start publishing those on your website and then using social and your EDMs to broadcast that stuff out. Look here, I just threw this in. This is a really good example of using a press release to create a story. So this is from Carry On recently, Singapore Airlines, a bit of news from Singapore Airlines about changes to their pre-ordering service on their meals. Now, this didn't come about because Carry On had a reporter, hanging around in the offices of Singapore Airlines. They've received a press release, and that very press release can be found on the Singapore Airlines website. Again, you go into the media center, there's a news releases section, have a dig around, you'll find that little bit of news. Now, once you've found that original bit of news, you can do whatever you like with it. You can pick out quotes and sentences, you can add your own sentences to it, and then publish it as an original piece of content, as these guys did. So again, Travel Authority received that as a press release, turned it into their own little bit of content, posted it on their website, and that went out in a newsletter. So it's another great way of finding and telling stories. So content might be king, but it is important to remember that distribution is the queen and she actually wears the pants. So you can tell all the stories you like, but if they're not getting out there, then you're really underplaying your efforts in that space. So make sure your stories are getting out. So again, the last few tips. Important to keep it simple, particularly to begin with. Be disciplined. If you say you're going to write or produce one piece of content a week or a fortnight, really work hard to stick to it. Monitor it, see what's working, see what people are engaging with on Facebook, see what people are opening when they receive your EDM. Use any kind of metrics you can find to see what people are engaging with. Be content focused and story focused as opposed to platform focused. And don't be too salesy. Really important that what you're saying is friendly, engaging, and designed to kind of get a conversation started. It's then up to you to keep that conversation going. And again, important not to talk about yourself too much. Thank you.
Fabulous. Thank you, Ben. All right, we have some time for Q&A session. So if you'd like to ask us any questions, please do so now through the toolbar and we'll do our best to respond to all of them. But Ben, that was some great insights on the importance of having a good user-friendly website and creating content for your audience. Can't stress how important to keep an ongoing discussion with your clients and prospective clients, and having that targeted to your little avatars of clients, different range of clients.
Yeah, I think they want to know that you travel a lot as well. I mean, if I'm engaging a travel agent, I want to know that that person travels a lot. They love travel. They know the industry kind of inside out. They are an insider. And I think more than ever, it's important to engage it in that area as opposed to constantly trying to fight on price. I know how frustrating that is for travel agents, particularly small independent operators. That's really, really, really challenging. And there are some much bigger players out there with much louder voices talking about price. So I think you kind of need to shift the conversation a little bit. And one way to do that is to tell those stories from within your business about your business, and to think like a publisher and tell travel stories. People love travel stories. There's a reason why the travel section in the weekend papers is as big as it is, and it's so full of promotions and advertising, and the travel magazines are so gorgeous and glossy and enormous. It's because people love it. And I encourage everybody in the industry, particularly at that retail kind of coalface, to be telling more of your own stories.
It's great, and it's absolutely doable. Facebook's free. It's as easy as sharing a funny photo or something that perhaps your customers have shared with you or you've seen. That's all it takes. You don't have to spend hours and hours writing content, and every travel business should have at least one of those options from Ben's suggestions on where you can find content.
Yeah, and look, it doesn't need to be words either. I know a lot of people kind of probably not confident writers, but you know, if you can find someone to kind of give something a bit of an edit and tidy it up and post it, that's fine. And again, it's important that you are authentic. Video is fantastic as well. I mean, the barriers to kind of creating good quality video are, you know, kind of falling away every day. So we're using our phones to video things, and there's some really kind of simple, easy editing software. So you could just create very short 10, 20, 30-second bits of video of you in. You might just be on a holiday in Venice and piecing together some video and using that to bring people back to your business.
Great. Well, we have a few questions, so we'll get started. One from Emmeline. She's running a blog page. Does that require to have more indexed pages, or do the posts need to be on separate pages?
Yeah. So most blog platforms will set up every piece of content as a new story with a new URL. And the beauty of that, as opposed to just having a kind of a single page that just runs forever and ever and ever with, you know, you're just adding stories to the top, is that you're creating new indexable pages, and then you can break those stories out one by one and broadcast those on Facebook, on LinkedIn, or include them as individual story items in your newsletter or whatever platform you're using. So yeah, I would set that up specifically as a blog platform, and in that way, each story is a new piece of content.
Great.
I hope that answers that.
Okay, we've got a question from Andrew. What are the rules or guidelines of reproducing or referencing someone else's news? Yeah,
so, I mean, you shouldn't just kind of grab something and post it and claim it to be yours. If you are using someone else's material, yeah, absolutely, you should provide a link, for example, back to the original source. If it's on social or Instagram, yeah, just attribute the original source of that content. Press releases, I think, are slightly different. You can always include a link back to the original release, but I think the opportunity with press releases is they are produced deliberately for the purpose of people grabbing that news and broadcasting it. And you can tailor it, grab it, personalize it. For example, with that press release about Singapore Airlines' new menu ordering, meal ordering service, you can then include a quote from within the business. You might say that, Sharon, the GM of insert your travel company's name here, said, we can't wait to try this service for ourselves. We know our clients are going to love it. And, it's another example of great things that, the leading, the reason Singapore Airlines are one of the world's leading airlines. So you can personalize it and then publish that as an original piece of content. But yeah, you shouldn't just, for example, grab a story from Carry On or from somewhere else and publish it and pretend it's yours. Always attribute it back to the original source, or you might use it but include an introduction. Say, we love this piece we've just found on traveling in, whatever the media magazine or platform is about traveling to Cambodia. It's one of our favorite places. In fact, Karen recently returned from Cambodia. You can read her trip piece here, but here's a link to the original story. So make sure that you're quite clear about the original source of it.
Great. Sue would like to see if you have any information about the social media management tool Hootsuite, if you've used that or...
Yeah, I don't use it a lot. It's great for scheduling, obviously. So if you really are producing a lot of content and you want to schedule across multiple platforms at multiple times, it can be really, really handy. The individual platforms now, I mean, you can schedule posts on Facebook, for example. I don't think there are any specific disadvantages for a while. I know a while back, I think Facebook didn't like posts as much if they were originally kind of posted from a platform like Hootsuite. But look, if they help you manage the posting and scheduling of content, for example, over weekends when you're not online or busy, then yeah, they can be handy.
Great. Tracy, I've got your note about the audio. Hopefully, if you want to listen to the recording, you'll be able to hear the audio is not dropped out for you. Apologies about that. Mark has asked, how do you not talk about yourself too much whilst at the same time write content about everything you do? Well,
I mean, it's kind of a good question. I guess that idea about not talking about yourself too much is about not being too salesy and just bombarding people with sales messages. I think people want to get to know your business and why you do what you do, and they really are gagging for interesting travel content. And I guess if you're not positioning yourself as an expert in what you do, then that's, I'm not sure kind of what your purpose of producing content is all about. It's tricky. It's about saying this is what we do and this is what we love, not check out how good we are at this. I mean, there's a slightly different kind of tone of voice and a way you might present that information. But if all you're doing is kind of posting prices and deals and offers, that I think you might find turns people off quite quickly. About getting a balance.
Okay. A question from Danielle. Would you try to use Instagram and Facebook differently? For example, Instagram for more photos and Facebook for stories or advertising?
Yeah, there's nothing wrong with the same content going out through both of those platforms, but I just think the way for example, Facebook's set up is that it opens up different forms of content for you to actually post there. I mean, it's much, sharing, for example, is much more effective on Facebook, and the ability to include a link back to something on your website is a real advantage there. So, I think you probably saw earlier on there were, even Virgin Australia are using Facebook to repost third-party Instagram content. So I say go for it. And again, as long as you're monitoring whether people like that, whether it's generating likes or comments or other people are sharing it, then you should be able to get a kind of handle reasonably quickly on whether that's the right kind of content for that platform.
It all really goes back to knowing your audience, knowing your customers and where they're placed. Another question from Andrew, do you prefer social media over EDMs? Are people getting sick of email?
I think people are getting sick of bad email, so I do have to make that distinction. My issue with social, it's really important, is that the Facebooks of the world are getting much, much better at your audience not seeing your content unless you pay for it. So they really restrict who sees what you're posting. Now, they post that, the way they kind of pitch that to you is, well, we've had feedback and we know that you want to receive content more from the people in your life and less so from the businesses in your life. Now, that's kind of business speak for, you'll see less business content unless those guys pay to have it delivered to you. So I guess what I'm saying there is, if you've got a really good database of email addresses, so people are giving you access to their email addresses and you're asking for it, and as long as you're serving up good content to them at a frequency that doesn't bug them, and again, you need to test these things, then I would go, I would absolutely focus on email. Now, again, we kind of go right back to that first principle, is concentrate on the stories first. So as long as you're producing stories and adding them to your website, then you've got content for your EDM. Because I know why EDM programs fall over, the campaigns fall over, is because once a month someone in the business goes, oh my God, we need to send out an EDM this week. And everyone looks at each other and goes, well, what should we say? Oh my God, what have we got? If, however, throughout the month, you've added a couple of pieces of content to your website, then come, let's do the EDM day, you may have 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 pieces of content ready to go in your EDM and send them out. Now, having them delivered directly into an inbox with links back to your website, I think is much more kind of potent response opportunity than just posting something on Facebook, putting it out there and hoping it reaches your audience.
Great. Anna's asked, do you have any recommendations for programs to use, for example, WordPress, MailChimp, or any others that you like?
So every website should have a blog. Every platform that the websites are built on should have a blogging capability, and that will just be a little plugin or a type of page content that you add to your website if you don't already have it, that will enable you to post those stories regularly and create a kind of storehouse of content. The EDM platforms, in terms of MailChimp, Campaign Monitor, Constant Contact, I don't really have a preference. I find them all pretty easy to use. I would always approach those, almost think about what you're producing in the way that what a carry-on email, for example, looks like when it hits your inbox. It's not 3 meters long. It's a headline, an image, a very short blurb and a link back to the website. So don't dump all of your stories in their entirety into the EDM. Just use them as the kind of headline or billboard to attract people, to get people to click on the link and go back to your website. I find them all pretty user-friendly. I guess at the moment I quite like Constant Contact. That seems to, I see some good stuff coming out of there. But yeah, they all do more or less the same thing.
Awesome. Tara's asked, she's heard short videos are trending in social media at the moment. Do you feel this is true, and do you recommend it? Yeah, short videos are amazing if you've got that capability to produce them. And they can live, I guess you would
probably in the first instance, post those to maybe your YouTube channel and then share them across to LinkedIn. I would also look at working on adding those to your website as well. But yeah, people love short video. I mean, people's attention spans these days are getting shorter and shorter. And again, it comes down to as long as what you're producing is interesting and not boring, then I think that's a great way to kind of position yourself, tell the kind of stories you want to tell about who you are and what you do.
Tracy said, we get bombarded by emails offering avenues of service relevant content. I find it too much of it's dumbed down. Is this because of the so-called short attention span of the reader?
I'm not sure what that what Tracy's referring to there. I wonder if she's talking about people approaching her to produce the content, or
I think it may be some of the content that she's receiving is quite lengthy.
Yeah, so that is a good point. But I think that kind of works to your advantage. If you don't have to, if you're writing something, if you're writing a trip review or a destination review or something, it doesn't have to be 1,000 words. It doesn't have to be 500 words. It can be quite short. Now, always good to accompany with some photos. You can use the hotel's photos for that. They don't have to be your kind of grainy photos that you took after you already slept in the bed and that kind of thing. So, yeah, keep things manageable. And as long as they're authentic and they come from you and they tell that story that you went and you saw and this is what you think of it, I think that's quite powerful too.
Great. If that helps, Tracy. If not, please reach out to us after and I'll put you in touch with Ben. I've got a comment from Julia. We've got so many great stories from our staff for meals, industry events, but we're not very good at travel content writing. Who can you recommend as a travel writer? Well, I'll put you in touch with Ben because he is the leader in this part of the industry. So I'll send you Ben's details, Julia. We've got a lot of thank yous coming through. Sam has asked if we have any suggestions for non-English speaking client markets. Sam, is that for content creation? I'm not too sure of the question. We might take that offline.
Sam, yeah.
But
people offering to supply content, yeah. Yeah, a tricky one because I'm a travel person. My first job in travel was a travel consultant, and then I've kind of over 20 years had various roles in marketing and communication. So I feel a bit like I kind of get travel. Now I know that so I do write for other industries, but I really struggle doing that. So I would make sure that whoever you use, if you do choose to use someone, that they really do have a travel background. If you can find someone who is like that, or has is a writer or a blogger, or maybe you approach someone and ask them to write a guest piece for your website or something. But yeah, I'd be wary of people who are not travel kind of centric, if that makes sense.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
It's all about finding the right person with the right narrative.
Yeah.
Yes, right for your business. All right, well, that's it for the Q&A. If you have any more questions, please send it through to either myself, belinda@after.com.au, or Ben's email address, which is on the screen. We will load up the session onto our website today and it'll be available tomorrow. So you'll be able to share it with your team or perhaps make a content article on your website about it. Feel free. And we hope to see you again soon at another webinar later in the year. Thank you. Thanks, Ben.
Thanks, everyone.